Hey guys, in this video, what I want to do is I want to demonstrate the quick and easy way that Tetration can go ahead and segment production servers from development servers. We all have that challenge. We all have that will to say, look, if you're a production server, you cannot talk to a development server, and we want to segment our data center that way, right? And so I want to demonstrate how quickly and easily this can be done within Tetration. So I've gone ahead and I've created a very simple global policy that would essentially be an umbrella to every single server within my data center, within my branch, within my campus office, within my within my cloud infrastructure, whether that's AWS or Azure. If I consider it a production workload, it won't be able to talk to anything that is in development. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate this with just two servers because I want to essentially show you guys how simple and quick we can do this. So here's what I've done. I have one CentOS server, and this guy I think is .70, and he's going to be my production server. Okay, on the other side, I have another CentOS server, and this guy is, I think he's .69, and he's going to be my development server. Okay, by the way, I'm left-handed, so sometimes I write up. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, look, if you're production, you cannot talk to test. So essentially, this communication, we're going to block. We're not going to allow it. Okay, and while we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to monitor the time it takes for that push to actually happen, the ability to actually segment the data center and tell these workloads, if you're prod, you're no longer allowed to talk to dev. What we also want to take a look at is Tetration's ability to alert or alarm on this particular behavior. So for example, we're going to test ICMP in this case, right? It's a very simple test that we're going to do. We're just going to say this server ping this server and vice versa. What we're going to do is we want to see how long it takes Tetration to alert us that this ICMP traffic is in fact happening between these servers. Okay, so if we're segmenting the data center and we've missed something or we forgot to add something to a policy, right, we want to know that it's essentially broken either beforehand or as it's happening. Okay, the next thing that we'll do is we'll look at the time it takes to actually make a change. So let's suppose that we forget that we have DNS servers and we have NTP servers. By the way, sometimes I'm dyslexic. We have AD servers, and these guys all live in a production workspace. Let's just say that they're SS or shared services, right? Maybe I want to block all traffic between development and prod. I want to segment these two environments, but there are production workloads that perhaps the development environment does in fact need access to. So in this case, what we'll do is we'll have a global policy that says block production from development, but what we'll do is we'll make a change. We'll go ahead and we'll allow ICMP. And so what will happen is at first we should see our ping stop. And then what will happen is once we make that change, we should see the ping come back, all the while we're still enforcing a global policy that all other traffic other than ICMP or other than DNS or NTP or whatever you want it to be is going to be blocked. Okay, so before we go and we do that, what I want to do is I want to take a look at the actual global policy. So this, by the way, is not the IP address of my server. Many people look at that and they say, well, you're displaying this in IP. How do I know what that is? This is actually the host name of my server. Within the Cisco lab, we have so many boxes, so many machines in our lab that it's just easier for us to name them whatever the IP address is. It helps us to keep track of it. So this, in your case, this could be, I don't know, dev db1 or something like that, right? So this would be the actual host name of your server. Now, in every case, every single server that we have within Tetration builds what we call a workload profile. And in that profile, I can see all of the policies that are currently being pushed down to that server. So in our case right now, you can see that we have an allow any rule. So here's all of our any's, right? So we don't care about the source, the destination. We don't care where it is. We're going to allow all traffic right now because we haven't actually segmented anything. So let's take a look at it. So we're 4 minutes into our video or so. Let me bring up our hosts. So these are our host boxes. This guy's production, this guy's test. Before we start, I just want to actually bring up the firewall rules on this particular server. So this is my production server. The only thing that we see here are those golden rules from Tetration, the ones that say essentially allow all traffic. These are, again, are our allow any rules. And if I brought them up on the development server, you would see the same thing. So let's go ahead and start a ping. We'll say ping 172.17.18.69. We'll go ahead and hit enter. And you can see we can reach the development server. Let's do the same thing over here. Ping 172.17.18.70. Okay, so these two servers, as of right now, can ping each other. So let's go ahead and let's create a policy. Now, in my case, my policy is going to have one additional item that yours most likely will not. We have a system here that allows us to kind of have a jump box. You'll notice that in my connection, this is actually a Google Chrome window. So what I need to do is I need to allow my jump box to be able to reach those servers. Otherwise, essentially, they'll die, right? We'll lose connection. So in your case, we wouldn't need this, right? This is my rule specific to my lab, so you can ignore this, okay? Let's create the policy that you guys would essentially have. So we're going to say prod, and this could be, production, PRD, it could be prod. You can label it whatever you want to label it. In my case, I've just gone ahead and called that prod. Now this prod filter, again, is something that is not location specific, not data center specific, not operating system specific. It doesn't care what it is. If I have declared it production, it is production. So we're going to allow production to only talk to production. Now, keep in mind, what happened here? I think I messed it up. Let's cancel that. We'll do it again. So we'll say add, we'll say prod, and we'll do that. We'll come over here. We'll say prod. I think I had an extra space there or something. And so what we're going to do is in our case here, we don't care what the port is. So you can see here, I could essentially allow or deny anything that I want. I have all these different protocols and whatnot. We're just going to say any. Because again, in this case, we're not looking to block, just ICMP or just, SSH or just, 1433 for SQL. We just want to block, or we just want to allow production to talk to production. What we'll also do is we'll create the same exact policy, except this time we're going to say development. Now keep in mind that Tetration is a whitelist. So the way that whitelisting works is that we are only going to allow the traffic that we want. Everything else, the catch-all here, is going to be deny. So in this case, this policy reads as follows. Development can only talk to development. Production can only talk to production. Again, this third line item here is just so that we don't lose the connection to watching the ping. You wouldn't need this in your environment, but you might have a jump box, or you might have some automated system, a backup system or something like that you'd want to add. So let's come over here to enforce. And I am going to go ahead and I'm going to click enforce. Before I do that, I want to go ahead and start my timer. So we'll click start, and we'll go ahead and we'll say enforce policies. We'll say prod can't talk to dev. This will be the reason. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click enforce. Okay, so in the meantime, what I'll do is I'll bring up these pings. These are active pings. Let me bring up the timer as well so we can see that in the corner. So we're about 19 seconds, 20 seconds in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave all this running. I'm going to pause the video so you don't have to wait here for a minute, and I'll come back with the timer running as the pings die. Okay, so you can see here that we are a minute and 22 seconds in, 23 seconds, and you can see that my pings have started to die on these particular hosts. So at this point, our policy within a minute and 30 seconds has pushed down to these guys and said, you're no longer allowed to reach one another. But what happened within Tetration? Let's head over to the policy here. This is the same screen that we had up before. This is my production host. All I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh the screen. And let's see if there were any policies that were pushed down to this particular server. And indeed, there are. No longer do we see, the first big change I want to point out is no longer do we see the catch-all allow any. We actually see the drop any, because at the end of the day, segmentation works by not allowing what's not approved. So we haven't approved prod to talk to dev, and so the end all is to block. So on this production host, remember this guy is my prod host, .70, we see a rule that says anything considered production can reach anything that's considered production. That's how this is working. And you can even see here that right now we only have one server in production, that .70, and here it is. So essentially this guy could only reach himself. We do also see this is my guacamole jump box, so we'll just say jump box. I don't want anyone to get confused on what it is. So this is my jump box, the one we're connected to watch those pings. You can see the bidirectional rule here that essentially allows these guys to communicate. So this essentially is working within a minute or two. We've successfully segmented production and test. Let's take a look at the policies. Let's actually see, let me bring up both. And we'll end this ping. And let's go ahead and we'll see, by the way, do I still have the timer running? Yes, it is. So 2 minutes, 58 seconds. We're going to leave that running because I feel like, we're probably 8 or 10 minutes into the video. In reality, the segmentation, most of it's been me talking. In reality, we've segmented our data center in 3 minutes. Okay, so let's go ahead and say sudo IP tables, and we'll say -L. And now you can see all of the additional rules that have gotten pushed down to these specific hosts, right? So here are the forwards, here are the blocks, here are the tetration inputs. So before, these were the golden rules, right? These were the guys that essentially said, yeah, you can allow and block everything. Here now we see these specific rules that essentially have the individual rules of what we are allowed and what we are not allowed to talk to. Again, this is the production host. If I come over here and say sudo IP tables -L, we'll see the same type of configuration where now we have individual rules that are being pushed down to these specific hosts to segment the data center, to say that if you're development, you're .69, you can only see other boxes that are development. You're .70, you're considered production. You can only see other boxes that are considered production. So what I'm going to do in the meantime, while we just kind of let that sit, in fact, what I need to do is I need to kick off a ping again. And the reason is because we want to see how, actually I can just hit the up arrow. We want to see how and where tetration can essentially alarm us that this traffic is taking place. So the first screen that I want to show you, we'll go back to our policy, and this is essentially where we are enforcing that policy. What I want to do is I want to bring you over to the alerts section and kind of show you the alert configuration. Now, right now, I don't have any alerts configured, so that's why you see the last date was August 31st. That's where we configure the alerts. Right now, I don't have any alerts configured for this specific lab, but this is where you would see some of those alerts that would pop up in Tetration, because suppose we want some kind of automation. Suppose we want to say, hey, if I do see something in prod talking to something in test, I want Tetration to kick off an alert. And Tetration can do that. Tetration can kick off an alarm. It'll tell you what that traffic may be. It will tell you what the host name is, what kind of traffic it is. It'll also allow us to either snooze the alarm because maybe we really don't care about it. Maybe it's something minimal. Maybe it is ICMP and we just don't care. Or maybe we want to whitelist it. Maybe we want to allow this. We can also configure a lot of different types of alerts. So what that means is if I have a compliance violation, what that means is I have a rule that says prod can't talk to dev. I make sure that I comply with this rule set. And if I have a compliance violation, what I can do is I can send off multiple different kinds of alerts. I can send out a syslog, I can send a simple email, I can send a chat to a Slack room or a group or something like that. I can even have automation built in with a Kafka bus. I can say, hey, go to ServiceNow and open up a ticket, and maybe in ServiceNow we have a workflow where that ticket then does this. There's a ton of stuff that I can do, but that's more complex and it's not as simple. But simply put, we can create alerts when these violations happen. But one of the features that's really, really cool within Tetration is this policy analysis tab. What this does is this not only allows us to see traffic that's blocked going forward, but it also allows us to see traffic that's blocked in the past. So for example, I have a policy right now at this exact moment that is enforcing production can't talk to test. Well, what if I want to see what that policy would have done a month ago or 6 months ago? I can go back in time and analyze that policy against my previous traffic. But what about traffic going forward? In other words, here we are, we're enforcing this policy right here. You can see policy 1, we enforce this at 12, whatever it was, right? Let's go ahead and we'll see if we have any ICMP denial traffic. So we'll say protocol equals, and we'll say ICMP. We'll say filter, and we'll see when the latest flow is that essentially we're rejecting. So right now it's October 10th. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to refresh this. We'll leave the timer going. Here it is over here. We're 7 minutes in. I've been talking quite a bit, and we'll see when this actually refreshes. So let me pause the video, and we'll come back when we have an active alarm. Keep in mind, this is not the alarm section. This is just where we would go in and we would analyze that traffic. So let me pause, and we'll see how long it takes. Okay, so I think I hit pause somewhere around the 7-minute mark, and you can already see that Tetration now is starting to give me alerts. So this particular one happened at 12:50. This was about, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes ago. So these alerts can happen fairly quickly, and these, again, really aren't alerts. Let me just refresh the screen again, see if we have any more. Really what they are is it's what we call live analysis mode. So this allows us to come in and see, actually that one from 12:50 just disappeared. Let me see if we can bring it back. So what they are is they're essentially alerts that allow us to see what traffic is being rejected, what kind of traffic is it, when did this particular traffic happen, what kind, again, what protocol was it, and what were the timestamps of it. So you can see that fairly quickly within a 5 or 10 minute window, Tetration will start to alarm and tell me, yes, you're having traffic that is now being rejected. So here's one at 12:49. This was this was a flow, again, that we were doing our ICMP packet drops, which we still have going in the background, that are being blocked. So I want you to realize that we're 10 minutes and 20, so we'll just say 10 minutes and 30 seconds into our data center segmentation project, right? We have segmented successfully production and test. We have also begun to see traffic that is in fact not only being blocked, but we're able to see what that is. And we're able to say, okay, well, you know what? I'm blocking ICMP, but I actually need it. So now let's go in and let's make a change, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually stop this timer. So we'll say within 11 minutes, we were able to successfully segment the data center. Let's go in here and we'll actually add another rule that says to allow ICMP, because we obviously realized based on our analysis that we need it, right? That we see that traffic happening. So let's go in here, and again, this could be NTP traffic, DNS traffic, whatever. Now, tetration rules are processed similar to a firewall. So what we want to do is we want to make this guy a priority 99, and we're going to go in and we're going to say that dev. It doesn't matter what direction we put it in. Dev and prod are allowed to talk to each other, right? So we're going to actually make this allow. But we're not going to allow everything because that would be silly, right? That would defeat the purpose. We're only going to allow ICMP, that one protocol that we saw. So essentially, we're only going to allow this. We're only going to allow echoes and echo replies rather. We're going to block everything else. I'll come over here and I'll enforce the new version of this policy. Again, I want the latest version. When we have multiple versions of a policy being enforced, you can go between versions. So suppose that I am up to policy number 5 and I break something and I want to go back to policy number 4. I can do that very easily. So description will say forgot ICMP, and we'll enforce it. Now what we'll do, we'll come over here, we'll start the timer, we'll bring our hosts back. These guys are currently being blocked. And so what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to leave the timer running, and I will come back right as the pings start to come back. Okay, guys, so I am back. You can see that my QA or development workload has gotten its policy first. And so we're now able to see that the development workload is able to send policy over to the production workload. The production workload is able to respond to the development workload, and the production workload's check-in just hasn't happened yet. So let me kind of go over to, by the way, this all happened within 2 minutes. So let me kind of go back to this policy view and we'll refresh it. I'll actually stop this timer now because we can see that that traffic is now beginning to flow. And you'll notice here that now we have an additional policy. So what does that mean? Now you can see that we have an ingress and an egress policy. That means going back and forth. We're allowing ICMP. Again, this could be NTP for time, DNS, LDAP for Active Directory. This could be email, SMTP, again, whatever, right? And you can see that we are allowing development to talk to production, right? So remember, .70 was the production workload, and we can see that because this is our production host that we're on. Same thing goes vice versa, right? In other words, in the other direction. So within 10 to 15 minutes, we were able to successfully segment production from test or from development, however you want to label that. This could be more than one area, by the way. You could have, you could have QA for quality assurance, can't talk to test, and testing could just be some kind of playground. You could have multiple environments, right? Tetration was built to scale. So we were able to do that first. We were able to see that Tetration can also generate alarms and alerts. Essentially let us know, alarms, essentially let us know when things are going bad. And we were also able to change this policy on the fly as we're also segmenting the data center at the same time. And we were able to do that within 10 to 12 minutes in our environment. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please feel free to reach out with any questions. Take care. Bye-bye.